Hi friends. I guess before we get to the video, I'll address a few things. Obviously my hair is different. If you followed me on Instagram, you would have known this by now, and the shock wouldn't be so crazy right now, would it? Yeah, we're not getting an anti-MLM video today. I don't think I'm the only one who needs a palate cleanser, right? So today I finally worked up the courage to tell you all how I brought this little squish into the world. Aww. My birth story is pretty eventful, and the things that happen after the birth is pretty eventful, so I've always been very open about pregnancy, and especially in my life in particular. So this is something else I'd like to also be open about because, you know, when I was in the hospital, and we'll get to it, but there were some things that I was trying to look up and get some answers on, and there weren't really a lot of people who had similar experiences to me who were sharing their stories either. Behind every piece of content I make, that's pretty much my main objective, is to kind of normalize things and also talk about the tough questions that people don't ever want to talk about. So anyway, so I was 38 weeks and 2 days pregnant, which, super interestingly enough, that's the same exact day that Sparrow was born in gestation. They were both born on 38 weeks and 2 days, which is crazy. Although I did go into labor a day before with Sparrow, and it was a 30-hour labor. My labor with him was much shorter. And this is gonna get a little TMI. So if you can't deal with like medical stuff, bodily functions and fluids and things, I don't know, I guess I would probably skip this one. But anyway, I would say about a week and a half, maybe even 2 weeks prior, I had lost my mucus plug, so at that point I was like, baby's gonna come anytime. But as I obviously learned, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I was without a mucus plug for like 2 weeks, and it came out over the course of like 3 days. But so I was always expecting to go into labor, and then finally one morning, it was 6 o'clock in the morning, my husband had just gotten up to get ready for work, and I noticed I was having like just very consistent, very mild little cramps. Like when I say mild, I mean like they hardly hurt, but they were there enough that I could notice them. And I used the app Baby Center to track my pregnancy and stuff, and they have a little tool where you can time your contractions. Hello, Pop-Tart. Can I help you? She's just, her little head's just in the way. So I started timing these little tiny pains, and sure enough, despite them not hurting pretty much at all, they were like 3 minutes apart, between like 3 to 5 minutes apart, I would say. And so my husband's in the shower, and when he got out, I was like, you shouldn't go to work today. And he was like, why? I'm like, I feel like something's happening. Like today, I'm pretty sure we're gonna have a baby. He ended up having to go to work to do something. I don't remember. He works an office job, so I think he had to submit some paperwork or something. But he's like, I'll come right back after I'm done. So I just sat at home and just like timed everything, and they never let up. But they also, over the course of a few hours, they barely got more like intense feeling. It was just so weird. Just like tiny little like, okay, it's over. So my husband comes back, and still it wasn't bad. I was like, just talk to me. Just let's have a conversation, and then when I have a contraction, you just keep talking to me because it helps me get through them. Like at this point, I knew that's what was going on. With how consistent they were, like I knew it was it. My goal was, so when I was pregnant with Sparrow, I was like, I'm gonna stay home as long as I can until the pain is just too much. And I did that. I think I stayed home for like 9 hours, but my labor with Sparrow progressed so slowly. I had no idea what I was in for. This time I was like, I am gonna hold out until I can't breathe. My mother-in-law the plan was she was gonna come over anytime and watch Sparrow at our house. So we just, whenever we were ready for her, just call her and let her know. So I was holding out. And also the other thing was that I had a doctor's appointment with my OBGYN at 3 o'clock that afternoon. And I was like, if I can just hold out till 3 o'clock and she can tell me whether or not I should go to the hospital. Like looking back, I'm like, God, Savannah, just like go to the hospital. But at a certain point, it was like maybe 10 a.m. at this point, all of a sudden things got really intense. Like to the point where I had to lean on a wall and like I started moaning and shit. Like I never even moaned with Sparrow when I had my labor with her, but I also got an epidural early. So I'm like sitting there just like in so much pain, and like I got the little yoga ball to sit on and stuff. My husband's like, wow, it got intense really fast. So I was like, yeah, I know. I'm gonna try to hold out till 3 o'clock. I called my mother-in-law, and Sparrow had to tell her to come over because I was like not able to speak because the pain was so bad. Mother-in-law got to our house around maybe 11:30 in the morning, and we went to the hospital. I just remember I walked in and they're like, here's the paperwork, and I was like, okay, let me fill. Oh, I had 3 contractions on the way walking from our car to the front door of the hospital. That's how close together they were. And I had to stop every time and like just breathe. My husband's just like, all right, just let me know when you're ready. I walked to the front desk and they're like, I'm not gonna even tell you where labor and delivery is. Just get in this wheelchair, I'll push you there. So I get wheelchaired into labor and delivery, which they still put me in triage and stuff because I had to have a COVID test and, they had to check me and make sure I was in active labor, which I think everyone just knew I was, but they still had to go through all the motions and stuff. When I got to the hospital, I was 6 centimeters. It went so fast, I guess, compared to what I was used to with Sparrow. I was still expecting like a whole day's worth of labor, but it just did not happen that way. At this point, I was begging for an epidural and they're like, hold on, when we get you in there, we'll get it to you really fast. It seemed like it took forever just to get me out of triage into the actual labor and delivery ward. It felt like it took 1,000 years. But finally, I was able to see the anesthesiologist and he came in and gave me my epidural, which also is crazy because with Sparrow, I guess I was just so in and out of it that I don't remember it because I had Stadol with Sparrow, and that kind of makes you just feel blackout drunk, so you're like in and out of consciousness for like an hour. So maybe that's just why I don't remember, but it took like 20 minutes to get my epidural, and that was awful too. You've got someone poking around in your spinal cord while also having very consistent and extremely painful contractions. At this point, it was my whole body. Like my whole body was like shaking and having like convulsions at every contraction. So it was really, really painful. But by the time they were done with that, it was only working on one side of my body. And they're like, oh, you can just press this button for an extra dose. You give yourself an extra dose and you'll be fine on both sides. I was like, all right, that's what I have to do. Okay. So I'm like hit immediately with 2 doses of the epidural. One side of my body, I can't even move because that was the side that I wasn't feeling anything. And now I just threw more medication into it. And then the other side, whatever. So then they go to put my catheter in. And as the nurse was doing that, my water broke. She was kind of like, ooh, oh my gosh. Like, that was so much fluid, which I knew I had extra fluid. That's why I was so big with Griffin. But yeah, she said it was a lot, but also there was, I think it's called meconium, which is just baby poop. So he pooped in the womb, which is a sign that the labor is very stressful. That concerned them. But basically, once my water broke, things went from 0 to 1 billion. Like, suddenly, Griffin's heart rate dropped. Like, I mean, so low. I couldn't see the monitor or anything like that because I also started vomiting. It was just a lot going on at once. And, like, they didn't even end up putting the catheter in because, like, all this other stuff started happening. Like, so the epidural made me throw up. I think it was just because I had the 2 doses all at once, because with Sparrow, I never threw up or anything. I think it was just a lot for my body to handle. But yeah, suddenly his heart rate is like close to nothing and I'm throwing up. And then suddenly there's like 7 doctors around me and I'm just like laying there not knowing what to do, but all I can hear is his heart rate, on the monitor. And I'm just focusing on that, being like, please be faster. But I felt myself kind of getting just dizzy. And so the nurses are like, how tall are you? When's your daughter's birthday? Like trying to keep my brain active. But then also there's like 3 nurses like doing stuff to my downstairs, I guess trying to do something with the baby. I have no idea. But it was really scary. This went on for about almost 15 minutes. And what I found out later is that whole time I was having a contraction for, I think they said it was like 11 minutes straight. So he was being just squeezed. My body just was going, which I guess I'm glad that I couldn't feel that because fuck that. But also no wonder he was under so much stress. So yeah, it was really scary. They called my OBGYN and she came rushing down. By the time she got there, everything had stabilized. So like my body stopped having contractions that close together. His heart rate went back up. But the problem then was that he was still high up. Like his head had not descended into the birth canal. And at this point, I'm like, great, I'm gonna need to have a C-section. And I really obviously didn't want to do that, but I would do anything to make sure he was safe, so whatever. I thought that with them calling my doctor so urgently that that's kind of what was on the table. But when she got there, everything was okay. But they have this, like, they call it the peanut. It's like a yoga ball, except it's shaped like a big giant peanut. And they put it between your legs and then they like change your position and stuff to try to get the baby's head to come down. But every time I did that, his heart rate would go really, really low again. So they'd be like, okay, that's not working. Let's flip you over this way. Okay, that's not working. And like, he just wasn't coming down. So my doctor was just kind of sitting there just waiting to see what would happen. And thankfully, out of nowhere, there. He's like, all right, time to go. I started feeling a lot of pressure and my doctor came in and she was like, oh, the head's right here. So I pushed for 2.5 minutes and he was out. He went from being high up in my like abdomen, I guess, into the birth canal, crowning within like 5 minutes on his own. And then I was just able to push him out super, super fast. Everything seemed great. At that point, he was 7 pounds, 5 ounces, but he seemed healthy and everything. And we get put into recovery and all that and everything's fine and dandy. That night, my nurse was coming in to check on him. And like me and my husband had just pretty much passed out because that's what happens when you have a baby. Things are just really exhausting. Quite frankly, it was not how we expected that day to go either. It just like happened out of nowhere. And by the way, I want to say from start to finish, I guess I noticed I was in labor at first at like 6 a.m. and I had him at 4:32. So I was in labor for, how long is that, 10 hours? Only in intense labor for a couple hours. But anyway, so the nurse comes in and checks his temperature and it's really low. So she had to check his blood sugar and his blood sugar was very low. He was always like trying to nurse with me. He latched right away, but I didn't really have any milk to give him. I had a little bit of colostrum, but so we ended up giving him formula and stuff and he was drinking the formula. Hi, Pop-Tart. Hello. He was still lethargic and then at that point it was hard to get him to eat. It would help his blood sugar if he would eat, but like he was lethargic and he was having a hard time processing sugar. For a few hours they monitored it and like gave him oral syringes of glucose, but unfortunately it never really leveled out. So they sent him to the NICU, which was really hard. I guess I had been through it before because Sparrow had jaundice and she had to be under lights for 24 hours, but at least she got to come home with us at that point. With Griffin, he ended up being in the NICU for 3 days. And I have to pull up what it exactly was because I just get the idea that some mom somewhere is gonna watch this who's going through the same thing. Okay, so it's just called neonatal hypoglycemia, which in extreme cases, it can cause brain damage because the babies can have seizures and stuff like that. But that's what it was. That's what he ended up having, and it took 3 days for him to be able to regulate his blood sugars himself. And it was really sad. It was hard because obviously, like, I had to be in the hospital recovering for another day, and he was on an IV, which is also really sad to see your newborn baby stuck with a giant IV. You know, he had it in his little hand. It was as big as his hand. Like, it's just sad. It was really hard. And the first time I went down to the NICU, they were trying to draw his blood. I can't even imagine, like, how do you even draw blood from a newborn, you know what I mean? But he was screaming, and I just stood there and just sobbed and like watching the doctors do all this. And of course I was wearing a mask because, you know, COVID. I had snot all up in my mask and I had to ask them, like, do you guys have like a tissue or something? I just got snot all up in my mask. It was hard. It was super hard. And not being able to be with him all the time for those 3 days, I think made it a little difficult for nursing. Like he started taking a bottle pretty well, but it took me a few weeks to get him to start nursing on me again. But anyway, that's beside the point. So yeah, obviously the whole time I was in the hospital, I couldn't sleep because I was just thinking about him and wanting him. I was up one night just like Googling, like looking through Baby Center, like the forums, like any forum I could find of moms who have had similar experiences with their babies. It was kind of one of those things where like a mom would go post about it on the forum and be like, has anyone else dealt with neonatal hypoglycemia before? Like, how long were you in the NICU? How long? And people wouldn't answer, like, and then they wouldn't come back and update. So like all I had were these articles of people saying like, oh, it could cause brain damage, could cause seizures, da 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 da. So I'm sitting here freaking out. Like all I wanted was to just hear someone else's story and be like, here's what happened, here's how long we were in the NICU, da da da. So 3 days is what it was for Griffin. Basically, I left the hospital on the second day, went home and stayed one night without him, and then we were able to pick him up the next day and he was fine, and he's been fine ever since. But it was really hard because also, you know, the whole time I was in the hospital, I didn't have Griffin and I also didn't have Sparrow. So I'm like, I'm a mom with my 2 babies aren't with me, you know? I had my husband, of course, but in this kind of situation, like, you just want to hold your babies, and yeah, it was very hard. But yeah, he's been good ever since. Another thing I wanted to talk about too, though, is how I've been coping after, because I'm kind of struggling a bit with like some form of postpartum depression. Now, I think a lot of it might be situational. It's rather a mild case because I'm not like having the thought thoughts of harming myself or my children or anything like that. Like that, those can be like really extreme and severe cases. I'm not having any of that. However, I am medicated for depression and anxiety my whole life. I'm on Zoloft, so I think that has to do with a lot of it. It just kind of is suppressing a lot of it. But when my husband went back to work, this is the 3rd or 4th week he's been back at work. I don't know at this point. Yeah, when he went back to work, it was hard because obviously it's just me with 2 kids now, and I started noticing that I was getting brain fog, which I struggled with a lot when I was pregnant, but once I had Griffin while my husband was home and stuff, like I started getting back to normal. I started feeling great. Once my husband went to work, the brain fog set in. I noticed that there was just a lack of motivation. Like it would come around to be like, I need to film a video or I need to edit a video. I don't want to do that. It was so bad that like I didn't even want to get out of bed to play World of Warcraft, okay? Like that's an issue for me. If I don't have the motivation to play my favoriteest video game, that's a problem. I would just spend days in bed just like snuggling with Griffin. And then at the same time, it's like general feelings of uselessness because like even looking around right now, like my house is a mess, dude. I feel like things are getting on top of me a lot and I'm having a hard time like finding the time or the motivation to clean anything, take care of anything. Like obviously I take care of my kids, but I hardly even take care of myself, you know? But it also to me feels manageable. I talked to my doctor and I was just like, you know, I don't want to start taking a higher dosage of my Zoloft because I have been on a higher dosage of it before and it was just bad. Like if I accidentally missed a pill or something, I'd get the brain zaps immediately. Like I would just feel like actually sick. And I didn't like being on that high of a dosage. So I was just like, I don't want to raise my dosage. So my doctor's like, well, I mean, then you pretty much just got to do some self-care. She was trying to tell me I need to get out of the house every day, even if it's just for taking a walk or something, which I get it, but it's hard. And I'm speaking, you know, honestly right now. The idea of being outside and just walking is a really good one, but I cannot bring myself to do it, to actually do it, if that makes sense. Like it's just this weird mental thing. And now, you know, I'm making more of an effort now that my doctor told me that's what you really need to be doing. I also feel like I kind of have like a weird lack of appetite. It's like I feel hungry, but like I can't find food that sounds good to me. So a lot of times I just like don't eat, and there's a lot of just like little things that are going on, but like all together it's just really overwhelming. And while, you know, there's obviously a lot more women who have postpartum depression way worse than I do, or even like postpartum psychosis and stuff like that. Like that's getting into some serious stuff, but I don't know, I just in general I feel like it's something that people don't ever talk about, and I'm glad that I was already like pre-medicated for it because I do feel like it could have been really, really bad. If I'm not on Zoloft, it's really bad altogether. Like I'm a totally different person, just like a bag of anxiety all the time. I think it's something that we need to kind of normalize because I think I was reading that like, what is the stat? Like 30% of women? Oh shit. 70 to 80% of women in the United States alone, at minimum, will experience the baby blues. The reported rate of clinical postpartum depression among new mothers is between 10 to 20%. 1 in 7 women may experience PPD in the year after giving birth. Like, that's a lot of people. That is a big number of people. I think I covered everything that I wanted to. Besides, you know, the PPD stuff, everything else is going pretty well. You know, Griffin is growing and Sparrow is in love with him. She loves her little brother and he smiles at her, so I think he loves her too. So far, I'm pretty sure he's meeting all of his milestones and doing good, so it was just kind of an emotional roller coaster. But I did want to talk to you guys about it, take a break from the anti-MLM stuff. Oh, also, everyone who sent us baby gifts off our registry, I did start filling out the thank you cards. I have to go buy stamps because there's so many of you. It's just kind of taken a long time because I'm like writing personal messages and all of them. So, but I did start the process and hopefully within the next few weeks I can get them out to you guys. So thank you again for every single one of you who sent us gifts for this little guy. I actually think these onesies were one of them. I know you can't really see him because he's in a baby sling, but yeah, they're just like little long sleeve onesies. I'm pretty sure one of you guys sent to us, so thank you. But also now let's thank my patrons because, you know, without my patrons and of course my members, I wouldn't be able to do the work that I do at home with my little miracle babies. So, but anyway, thank you so much to Amanda McMahon, Turd Ferguson, Katrina Rosemarick, Elizabeth Wyatt, Karina Winman, Maria Burchett, Meredith Nakata, Molly Wasilewski, April Lindblom, Boris Geller, Daniel Urena, E. Higgins, Erica Louder-Craddock, Evan Adler, Eve Blondo, Justin Kelsey, Kelly Creffield, Kim Cartwright, Laura Lynn Martin, Maddie Darley, Rach J, Rachel McHenry, and Tuesday the 13th, and to the rest of my wonderful patrons and members. If you want to become a patron, the link is down below, or it's just Patreon patreon.com/SavannahMarie. Sometimes the links in my descriptions don't work. Or you can become a member on YouTube. Same perks, same prices, all that. There's a join button right underneath this video. So go ahead and check that out too if you want to support your girl. And with that all being said, keep making waves, babes. Also, as I'm saying that, I put down a deposit for new merch art, so I told the artist not to rush or anything like that, so I don't know when it's gonna be out, but I'm gonna be replacing the old Make Waves merch with a new design sometime soon, so keep an eye out for that. I'm really excited about that, so that'll be out soon. Anyway, but for now, keep making waves, and I'll smell you guys later. Get back into the anti-MLM grind this Monday with MLM memes and Makeup Monday. So, yep, okay, smell you later, bye.